Imagine New York City, 1884. It was a city of shadows and soot. When the sun went down, the skyline didn't blaze like it does today. It glimmered faintly under the sickly, shivering yellow glow of gas lamps. The smell of gas hung heavy in the air. At the docks, a ship from Europe arrives. Stepping onto the gangplank is a young Serbian man, tall, lanky, with intense, feverish eyes. In his pocket, he has exactly 4 cents. His luggage is practically empty, save for a few poems he wrote himself and a single letter of recommendation. That letter was written by Charles Batchelor, addressed to the most famous man in America at the time. The letter contained just one line: "I know 2 great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." That young man was Nikola Tesla, and the recipient was Thomas Alva Edison. This is the moment of destiny. 2 galaxies are about to collide. To understand why this war became so brutal, you have to understand the DNA level difference between them. They were oil and water. Thomas Edison, the Wizard of Menlo Park, was the embodiment of the American dream. Uneducated, street-smart, and entirely self-made. Edison was a man of trial and error. His motto was, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." If Edison wanted to find a filament for a light bulb, he would test 6,000 different materials, from beard hair to bamboo, until one worked. He was a brute force worker, a ruthless businessman, and a master of media. And Tesla? Tesla was the polar opposite. Tesla was an aristocrat of the intellect. He dressed impeccably, wore silk gloves, and was obsessed with cleanliness. But the scariest thing about him was his brain. Tesla didn't need trial and error. He possessed visual thinking. He could build a complex machine entirely in his mind, run it, test the gears for wear and tear, and fix it. All in his imagination before he ever put a single sketch on paper. Edison worked with sweat. Tesla worked with hallucinations. When Tesla walked into Edison's New York office, he thought he had found a mentor, a father figure. He eagerly pitched an idea for a new kind of electric current he had seen in his visions. Alternating current, I see. Edison, who was making a fortune from his direct current, DC system, laughed. "That's dangerous," Edison said, "and a waste of time." But Edison hired him anyway. There was a critical technical problem with Edison's DC dynamos on the SS Oregon ocean liner. Edison made a promise. If you can fix those machines and improve their efficiency, there's $50,000 in it for you. $50,000 was a fortune back then, over $1 million today. To Tesla, that money was the capital he needed to build his AC dream. Tesla worked like a madman. He worked 20 hours a day. He fixed the machines. He redesigned Edison's entire system, making it more powerful and efficient. After months of grueling labor, Tesla walked into Edison's office, covered in grease, but eyes shining. "I've done it. This system is perfect. I'm here for the bonus." Edison looked up from his desk, eyed the naive young man, and chuckled. He spun his chair around and delivered the line that would ignite the greatest industrial war in history. "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor. There was no $50,000. It was a joke." Tesla stood frozen. The admiration crumbled. He felt humiliated, swindled. Immediately, he grabbed his hat and walked out the door. He would rather dig ditches to survive than work for a liar for one more second. The seeds of hatred were sown. The war was no longer just about engineering. It was about honor. After walking out of Edison's office, The greatest genius of the 19th century fell to the very bottom of society. During the winter of 1886, if you walked through the freezing streets of New York, you might have passed a gaunt man in a tattered coat, laboring in the mud to dig trenches for underground cables. That was Nikola Tesla. He was earning $2 a day. Imagine the bitterness. A brain holding the blueprints for a new era was commanding hands that shoveled dirt. Meanwhile, Edison was living at the peak of fame, lighting up the mansions of the elite with his expensive DC system. But history has a strange way of arranging things. While digging ditches, Tesla talked about alternating current. The foreman listened. Rumors spread. And finally, word reached a man, a missing piece that would make the war explode. George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was an industrialist, but he was different from Edison. If Edison was a cunning fox, Westinghouse was a stoic, fair bear. He had made his fortune inventing air brakes for trains. He had money, and more importantly, he hated Edison's monopoly. Westinghouse found Tesla. He didn't laugh at the AC idea. He bought Tesla's patents for $60,000, cash and stock, and offered generous royalties for every horsepower of electricity sold. Why did Westinghouse bet so big? Because he understood Edison's fatal flaw. Let's pause for a second to understand the physics in the simplest way possible. Edison's direct current, DC, is like water flowing through a pipe in one direction. The problem is friction. Over distance, the water pressure drops. To light a bulb just 2 miles from the power plant, Edison needed copper wires as thick as a man's wrist. And he had to build a noisy, smoky power plant every single mile. It was insanely expensive. It made electricity a luxury item for the rich in the city center. Tesla's alternating current, AC, was different. It didn't flow one way. It vibrated back and forth 60 times a second. Thanks to a magical device called a transformer, Tesla could step up the voltage to extreme levels, shoot it hundreds of miles over wires as thin as hair, and then step it down to safe levels at your house. DC was a horse-drawn carriage for short trips. AC was a high-speed train for the long haul. Westinghouse and Tesla began lighting up small towns in the suburbs for cheap. Their light was brighter, wider, and steadier than Edison's yellow glow. Edison's empire began to tremble. Edison was no fool. He looked at the math and knew he was losing the tech race. His copper was too expensive. His generators were too weak. He couldn't beat Tesla with physics. So, what does a powerful man do when he can't win by the rules? He plays dirty. Edison decided that if he couldn't prove AC was inefficient, he would prove it was deadly. He would brand Tesla's current as the executioner. The greatest smear campaign in American history began. Edison leaked rumors to the press. Alternating current will kill your children in their sleep. But words weren't enough. Edison needed visuals. He needed blood. At his West Orange laboratory, Edison began paying neighborhood children. He offered them 25 cents for every stray dog or cat they could catch. For what? To perform public demonstrations of horror. He would strap the innocent animals to a metal sheet, wire them to a Westinghouse AC generator, and flip the switch. Audiences screamed in terror as the animals convulsed and died instantly. Edison would point to the smoking carcass and declare, "You see? This is what Westinghouse wants to put in your bedroom." The war of currents had officially turned into a horror show. But Edison wasn't stopping at dogs and cats. He was aiming for a bigger target to bury Tesla's reputation forever: a human being. Edison had a new term he wanted to force into the dictionary. To Westinghouse, it didn't mean to light up a room. It meant to be electrocuted. In 1888, a dentist named Alfred Southwick had the idea of using electricity for execution, thinking it would be more humane than hanging. Edison, who was publicly against the death penalty, suddenly saw a golden opportunity. He secretly funded Harold Brown, an engineer acting as a puppet, to lobby the government to adopt the electric chair. And the most critical detail, the chair had to run on Westinghouse's AC current. Edison even arranged for the secret purchase of a used Westinghouse generator to power the chair, ensuring his rival's name would be forever linked to death. On August 6, 1890, at Auburn Prison, New York, history witnessed the first execution by electrocution. The inmate was William Kemmler, a murderer. Edison promised a quick, painless death, but the reality was a scene straight out of hell. The first jolt lasted 17 seconds. Kemmler fell unconscious, but he was still breathing. The doctors panicked, screaming, "Turn it on again. He's not dead." They cranked the voltage up to 2,000 volts. This time, the current cooked the prisoner from the inside out. Blood vessels burst under his skin. The smell of burning flesh filled the witness room, causing officials to vomit. A reporter present described it as an awful spectacle, far worse than hanging. George Westinghouse, upon hearing the news, delivered a line of biting bitterness. They would have done better using an axe. Edison's tactic backfired. Instead of fearing a sea, the public was disgusted by the brutality. And more importantly, no matter how much mud Edison threw, he couldn't deny the economic truth. AC was cheaper and better. The war reached its climax at a monumental event, the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893 in Chicago. This was the Olympics of technology. Whoever won the bid to light this fair would win the war. Edison, now merged into General Electric GE, bid $554,000 to light the fair with DC. Westinghouse accepted a loss to gain the glory, and he won. On the night of May 1st, 1893, President Grover Cleveland pressed a button. Boom! Hundreds of thousands of Tesla, Westinghouse phosphorescent bulbs illuminated simultaneously. For the first time in human history, the night was completely defeated by a brilliant white city. The light was soft, stable, and dazzling. But the real showstopper wasn't the bulbs. It was in a conference hall where the wizard Tesla took the stage. He wore a perfect white tie and tails. He didn't bring dogs to kill. He brought his own body. Tesla stood on thick rubber-soled shoes. He placed one hand on a device generating high-frequency current, a Tesla coil, with voltage running into the hundreds of thousands. The audience gasped. If Edison was right, Tesla should drop dead instantly. But he didn't. The current raced over Tesla's skin, exited his other hand, and lit a wireless bulb he was holding. His body was surrounded by a halo of blue electric fire. He looked like a living Zeus, playing with lightning. He smiled at the crowd. He proved that a C current, if controlled at the right frequency, was perfectly safe. It wasn't the Reaper. It was magic. In that moment, Edison lost. He didn't lose because he lacked money. He lost because he lacked vision. He tried to sell technology using fear, while Tesla sold it using wonder. The victory in Chicago opened the final door. The ultimate prize of the war of currents was waiting on the border of New York and Canada, Niagara Falls. Whoever controlled the power of this monster waterfall would control the energy for the entire Northeast. And this time, even Edison's own investors weren't on his side anymore. Niagara Falls, a monster of nature. Millions of tons of water crashing down every minute, creating a roar that shook the earth. This was the final trophy. Investors knew that whoever harnessed Niagara held the key to powering the future of America. Initially, the Niagara Commission, led by the famous physicist Lord Kelvin, leaned toward Edison's DC. Kelvin was conservative. He didn't trust Tesla's dancing, alternating current. But after witnessing the blinding success at the Chicago World's Fair, Lord Kelvin did a complete 180. He issued a short statement that slammed the door on Edison's hopes. Trust Tesla. Nothing else will do. In 1895, the world's first major hydroelectric plant was built at Niagara. Massive turbines bearing Tesla's name were installed. History's greatest irony happened here. To complete this massive project, Westinghouse needed more manufacturing power. And who had the biggest factories? General Electric, GE, Edison's company. But by now, J.P. Morgan, the financial titan behind GE, realized Edison was wrong. Morgan ruthlessly pushed Edison's ego aside and forced GE to license Tesla's AC patents. Edison was defeated in his own house. His name was eventually removed from the company title, changing from Edison General Electric to just General Electric. On November 16, 1896, the switch was thrown. Current from Niagara Falls shot through 20 miles of wire, lighting up the city of Buffalo. The next day, the New York Times headline read, "Niagara's power has arrived. The war of currents was over." Alternating current, AC, was the absolute victor. Tesla had won. He became a global hero. He was the man who tamed the thunder. According to his contract with Westinghouse, he was owed $2.50 for every horsepower of electricity generated. With the impending global explosion of electricity, Tesla was on track to become the wealthiest person on the planet. He would have been the world's first billionaire, richer than Rockefeller or J.P. Morgan. But tragically, Tesla didn't have the DNA of a businessman. He had the heart of a poet. After the brutal war with Edison, the Westinghouse company was financially exhausted. Investors threatened to pull out if Westinghouse didn't cut costs, and the biggest cost was Tesla's royalties. George Westinghouse, Tesla's only true friend and ally, went to see him. He spoke in desperation. "Nikola, if I pay you, the company collapses. The dream of bringing a sea to every home dies." Pause at this moment. If it were Edison, he would have called his lawyers. He would have sued for every last penny. But Tesla looked at his friend. He looked at the contract worth billions in today's money sitting on the desk. And he said, "You believed in me when the world laughed at me. You saved my dream." Tesla picked up the contract, and he tore it into pieces. He waived his royalties. He walked away from unimaginable wealth to save the company, to ensure that a sea current would continue to spread to the world. It was an act of nobility, so high it bordered on madness. And it was the beginning of his personal downfall. While Edison died in a comfortable bed, wealthy and hailed as a national icon, Tesla slid into the shadows. He spent the rest of his life in solitude and poverty. He lived in New York hotel rooms, behind on rent, pouring his love into the pigeons in the park. He famously said he loved a specific white pigeon as a man loves a woman. The genius who invented the 20th century, the man who brought light to humanity, died alone in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker in 1943. When the maid found his body, he was surrounded only by technical drawings and birdseed. But look up at your ceiling right now. Look at the light bulb glowing. Look at the computer humming. The current flowing through them is Tesla's current. Edison may have won the war for wealth, but Tesla won the war for eternity. As Tesla once said, a quote that encapsulates his entire existence, "The present is theirs. The future, for which I have really worked, is mine."